You have a lot of extra maintenance. People tear the crap out of your property. Nobody talks about that. That's the dirty little secret of Airbnbs. You're constantly buying carpet. You're constantly buying paint and drywall repair. Because they do not take it. I don't care how big a deposit you get or how much screening you do. It's not their house. And so you're going to have a high level of repairs and maintenance, which is part of that hassle factor.
Look, come on. This is hype. This is hype that Airbnb tenants trash units. All right, Dave Ramsey's got 3 big problems here with Airbnbs, and I've got some problems with Dave's problems, but we'll agree on a few things. But there's a caller calling in who's moving from Texas to Oklahoma, and he's gonna Airbnb his house. At least he's thinking about Airbnb-ing his house in Texas to get the income off of it to help support him and maybe move towards building income that he can eventually live off of. Watch Dave's response here.
I love your goal, and I don't dislike your plan overall. I would sell the house and move the money to Oklahoma, pile up some more cash, and pay cash for your first rental in your own backyard. Airbnbs have 2 problems that all the people that talk about how much money they make with them don't bring up. They have 3 problems that people don't bring up. Problem number 1, there's a ton of hassle, a lot of details, a lot of work involved in getting the people in, getting them out, getting them cleaned, all that kind of stuff.
All right, so that's kind of fair. Like Airbnbs, I wouldn't say they have a ton of hassle. He uses extreme language here.
What's your language?
He has a very negative stance towards Airbnb, but basically he's saying it's a ton of hassle. Now, I gotta tell you, out of probably every 100 guests that I have, one of them is a hassle. 1 out of 100 has been a hassle. And sometimes it's just a minor hassle. Sometimes it's bigger, but it's not always the guest. It's also could be the house or the property. Could have a lot of things that go wrong. We've got an Airstream that's an Airbnb. That's got a lot of things that can just be funny on it or operate differently than a house. So there are certain situations where it can be more work and more detail oriented, but you can build systems around that. You can build support systems around that, but it's just interesting to see that he starts off using slightly inflammatory language, that it's a huge hassle. Check this out.
Probably 25x a normal rental, because you'll have multiple renters in a single month, right?
Oh, renters.
And so you've got maid service, you've got a higher level of maintenance.
Okay, so you don't always have multiple tenants a month with Airbnb. You can, with furnished rentals, let's just say furnished rentals, because Airbnb isn't the only way to do it. With furnished rentals, you can have monthly tenants. I have tenants come into my furnished rentals, and some of them I only do monthly on, and they'll lease. They could be traveling nurses or traveling medical people, and they're in for at least a 3 to 6 month contract. And they're paying significantly more rent to have a furnished unit where all the utilities, the Wi-Fi is working, everything is up and running. They can plug and play in a new city. And that is one tenant, sometimes over 3 to 6 months. So again, we're generalizing, we're using inflammatory language. It can be true, what he's saying, but it's not always true.
That's not true.
Let's dive in a bit more.
A lot of work involved in managing and messing with them. Okay, so a lot of hassle.
Could I speak?
Go ahead.
So sorry to interrupt. Can I just speak to that? I do have family here in Texas that would be managing the property, and so I kind of have a little bit of a built-in system. Where
which is a bad idea. You're taking advantage of your family.
But we're family.
Okay, I'm telling you, Airbnb, the hassle factor is very high. There's great money, but the hassle factor is very high. So if you want to do an Airbnb, it needs to be in your backyard. Problem number 1 with Airbnbs. Problem number 2 with Airbnbs is...
Okay, so before we get into problem number 2 here, look, the hassle factor is high, true, but what business? You're running a business.
Business. This is business.
So, running a restaurant, the hassle factor is high. That's like me telling you, you can run a restaurant, but only run a restaurant if it's in your own backyard. Yeah, maybe, because the management's intense, the details are important. Same thing in a short-term stay. The details are important and the management can be intense. But what he's saying here is he's just generalizing. Now, the family factor, I do agree with. Like, you got to be careful. I mean, I don't know if the guy's planning on paying his family, but, you know, you need people who are sharp and skilled at picking up the phone, responding quickly. Maybe you need someone on the team who has some maintenance expertise. And so, again, just because they're family does not mean that's going to be a good situation. It could even make it a more complicated situation. So there, we do agree.
You have a lot of extra maintenance. People tear the crap out of your property. Nobody talks about that. That's the dirty little secret of Airbnbs. You're constantly buying carpet. You're constantly buying paint and drywall repair because they do not take it. I don't care how big a deposit you get or how much screening you do. It's not their house. And so you're going to have a high level of repairs and maintenance, which is part of that hassle factor. The third thing that nobody's talking about
hold on here. Hold on. Look, come on. This is hype.
Don't believe the hype.
This is hype that Airbnb tenants trash units and throw parties all the time. Now, it does happen. Absolutely. It does happen, especially depending on how it's managed and a lot of other things. Could also do with location and a lot of things. But it does happen, but it's rare. It's very rare. And I will tell you this, after doing over 1,000 stays on Airbnb, hosting as a host, over 1,000 guests, I'm telling you right now that when I do it side by side with my rental units, long term, and the short term, side by side, I can tell you right now the short term have less than half of the wear and tear of the long term. I mean, these people that are doing the short term, especially when we're in locations that are travel destinations, they're barely even in the place. I mean, they're out, they're eating out, they're skiing, they're going to the beach, they're doing whatever. They're not sitting around in that rental unit. They're barely there.
We're tourists.
These places get very little wear and tear. It's almost the opposite of what he's saying here. And so I disagree. I don't know how many Airbnb units he has. It doesn't sound like a lot. Sounds like he's very opposed to it, doesn't want the hassle, even though it would be a management company that would manage it for him. But I'm telling you right now, this is not true. I've had a 74 unit building, 10 of them we had set up as Airbnb units. Those 10 were always in the best condition, the least wear and tear of all the other units, with a few exceptions, but almost all the other units of people that were living in there full time. So I disagree there.
Areas are now passing zoning prohibiting it.
Right.
And so if you set your whole model up only on Airbnb, you could have the rug jerked out from under you. If the only way the deal works is Airbnb, don't do the deal because it might not be available to you. Now, if you want to run the hassle for the extra money,
Okay, so let's look at that. That is absolutely true. There is a lot of cities and a lot of counties and areas where they're making Airbnb either illegal or they're changing it into a permitting process, or there's all kinds of things going on. So that is a factor that you have to be very, very careful of. And the other thing is, if the deal only works if it's Airbnb or if it's short-term rental, don't do the deal. I agree. I totally agree. Like, you want to run numbers conservatively. You want to make sure at the least it works on a monthly furnished level, because monthly furnished can be popular. The only challenge to monthly furnished is you might get vacancy, especially if it's a seasonal type of place. You might get vacancy, and then maybe you could do month to month and then short term in between the month to month people. But you do have to be careful. Ideally, you want to make sure the deal makes sense just renting on a 1-year lease, and then everything else is icing on the cake, right?
I like cake.
You want to be conservative with your due diligence and how you're underwriting it and running your numbers, but I totally agree with that point.
Because it might not be available to you. Now, if you want to run the hassle for the extra money and run the maintenance for the extra money, you'll make more money, but it's a lot of work. So I would move the money to Oklahoma, whether you're going to do a straight rental or whether you're going to do an Airbnb, because it's in your backyard and you're going to lay your hands on it, and you are a man who controls your destiny. You don't ask your first cousin to do it.
No man controls my destiny.
Yeah, I do agree with the statement of if you're going to run an Airbnb, do it in your own backyard to a certain degree, because there's a lot of power in you being close and having control and a view, an eye on the details. Let's say it's a guest house, or you're living in a duplex and you've got one of the units Airbnb, you're living in the other one, or maybe it's a duplex and you live nearby and you've got both units rented, something where you can keep a close eye on it. Or you have a really good management company, a vacation rental management company that can do that for you. But either way, that's where, we kind of agreed on a few points, we disagreed on a few others, but that's where I'm at on the Airbnb and the 3 biggest challenges. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode.